public session and asked you to join us for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. Thank you. Thank you very much. I apologize for us being late. First, we will have the acceptance of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Is there any changes or deletions? Do I have a... Thank you. I have a motion to accept the agenda. Do I have a second? Mr. Durst, second. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you. This is the agenda we will be using. Next we have public comment. If folks signed up for public comment, I will call your name. You can come forward to the podium. There's a microphone there. Okay. Don Coble.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you once again. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. That's by Martin Luther King. In the booklet, The Stress of Organizational Change, it recognizes a wide range of factors that are reshaping our world and the way we live, but focuses on three major factors having a great impact on education in this country. It does include Garrett County. And I've added a fourth one called fear. First one is technology. 80% of the world's technological growth has occurred since 1900. It is now doubling every 4 years. In other words, today's graduating high school seniors in Garrett County will have technology doubled over and beyond the same class of graduating college students everywhere else. This means the older we become, the faster we become obsolete. But how do you keep up? Well, first of all, importantly, not by closing schools for our children who still have a chance. Currently, the ranking of the United States has fallen behind the world in education, as low as 35th, and the numbers keep getting worse. An article stated that if this trend of school closings continues, by 2025, in some communities, there will be as many as 100 screaming first graders crowded in a single classroom. Already there are those in Garrett County proposing that northern and southern high schools should be combined into one enormous high school complex up by the community college. Just imagine the nightmare that would bring, especially in winter. The second thing is information. More information was produced in the 30 years between 1965 and 1995 than was produced in the entire 5,000-year period prior to that. Information is now doubling every 3 years. Too many kids in a classroom will fall far behind. And now, world population growth. Human beings have been around for nearly 7 million years, depending on whose bones you're looking at and where. It reached 1 billion in 1860, 2 billion in 1935, 4 billion in 1975, and today we're closing in at 6 billion. U.S. Census predicts a world population of 10 to 12 billion people by the year 2040. We cannot feed and educate everybody now. Oh yes, we are losing students here in Garrett County, but it isn't this a catch-22? Close schools and parents either will move away or send their kids elsewhere. But just down the road, there are coming. The people are coming. Urbana, south of Frederick, for example, once had 200 people. It now has between 7,000 and 10,000 homes. Frederick is experiencing uncontrolled growth, and like the movie The Blob, is expanding in every direction. Myersville is exploding. Wolfsville is losing farms to housing developments, and Hagerstown is expanding and western movement is underway. Do I have 30 seconds? President Roosevelt said we have nothing to fear but fear itself. But the Little Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland, when she didn't get her way or things became difficult, screamed off with their heads. I hope that is not what is happening here. Parents are in fear of losing their home towards schools or fear of moving here not knowing whether their children will go to school. Communities are in fear of becoming ghost towns. People are in fear of losing their jobs. Students are in fear of having to move either to another school, and the word is spreading fast. And you know what is really ultimately so sad? Many teachers in this school system are now in fear of stepping forward for fear of reprisal or harassment and threats of termination. How ironic that in another movie, Hunger Games, the underlying message was that no matter the fear, the terror, the unknown, abandonment, and pain, hope was always and will be far greater than fear. And in closing, Winston Churchill said, "There are no hopeless situations in life, only those who have grown hopeless about them. So as in the goblet of trust that I gave you, let us hope you will bravely go forth, and as the old quote goes, measure twice before the cutting." Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Barbara McKinney.
Good evening. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening. I've been coming to these Board of Education meetings for the past 2 years. I'm concerned with many aspects of your board and central office. Last year you closed one school and not another after receiving money from the commissioners to keep those schools open. The extra funds from the commissioners to keep the other school open was used to increase wages at central office and for new teachers. With the declining enrollment and the closing of one school, why did we need more teachers? What gave you the right to do this in the situation that we were in? Now here we are again, this time asking for the closing of 2 elementary schools. This is supposedly because of funding. I have some figures that I would like to share with you. I have a comparison of salary increases from the year 2000 to date. The Board of Education salaries have increased 60%. Classified government employee salaries have increased 51%. Law enforcement employees' salaries have increased 54%. Roads Department employee salaries have increased 55%. As you can see, our education system has had the largest increase in the county of 60%. Our Roads Department and classified government employees did not take a raise last year because of the budget, and yet the Board of Education received increases. Where does this say we have to close schools? When I have to make cuts in my budget, I take a hard look at things I do not need or things I can do without. Your system seems to keep adding and not taking away, except for closing schools. Through all of this, I've heard very little about the teachers, the students, and the teachers, the students, and the communities. I feel the Board of Education is holding these groups as hostage for funding. You've talked about redistricting. We asked you last year to do this before closing Bloomington. You did nothing, and you've talked about it again this year and have done nothing. Logic says to me that you should redistrict first and see where the students are before closing more schools. One thing we do know is that once a school is closed, it will never open again. Our superintendent last year closed one school and retired that same night. Now our interim superintendent is planning to close 2 schools and she is retired. I would like to suggest to you, and I do so strongly, you dismiss her recommendations about closing schools and hold out until we have a new superintendent with new ideas and a new vision for our system. Sometimes those who have been here so long have tunnel vision and cannot see their way to different ideas and solutions to the situation. Please consider our students, our teachers, and our communities. We are proud of them all. We would like to say that we are proud of our school system and our elected board also. Please do not close our schools. Find a way and make us proud once more.
Thank you. Next person is Diane Dunham.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Lately, within the past 2 weeks, I began reading a book entitled How People Get Power by SciCon, published by the National Association of Social Workers in 1994. Senator Paul David Wellstone stated that without grassroots organizing, electoral politics is politics without a base. Without grassroots organizing that builds power for ordinary citizens, there is no constituency to fight for the changes in public policy in such critical areas as healthcare, education, and jobs. Recommending closures of school has been successful at one thing. We have divided communities and forced them against one another. But yet we all stand here today with one purpose. Maybe some to close the schools, many to keep them open. We all stand here today because we hold value in the future of the education of our children, who will one day possibly be sitting in your very shoes, standing in your very shoes. We all send our children to school every day and trusting the education they receive in the hands of the educators who teach them. We value our educators, and we are concerned about what the backlashes and consequences, what will be rendered from the decision to close these schools. I would like to ask that we continue to allow these schools to remain open, allowing the new superintendent, as said before, we will have new ideas, and we need to involve the communities. We need to rebuild relationships between commissioners, Board of Education, and our citizens. We have done nothing but separate our communities, and we are divided. Thank you.
Danielle Martin.
Thank you for letting me talk today. We need to look at the big picture, our teachers and staff and our children. Last year we were in the same boat as we are now, but you were given $1.7 million from Garrett County Commissioners to save both schools, but you chose not to. You chose to give pay raises. You gave pay raises, about $400,000, as the audits show. You chose well over being our children, yet now here we are again. You were given money again today by the commissioners to keep schools open. There is no reason you can't honor their wishes, as well as every parent, grandparent, concerned citizen, and teachers, and our children. I challenge you to do what is right for the children and staff, and not just how we know what we'll have to do. We will not back down, and we will keep fighting for Garrett County education.
Thank you. Kara Lyons.
Hi, my name is Kara Lyons, and I would like to thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts. I'm for no school closing, but I'm especially here this evening for Kitzmiller. And I would like to point out that Kitzmiller is an efficient school to run. It costs only about $32,000 to keep the building open. With such a low operating cost, it's a possible solution to keep Kitzmiller open and relocate students from areas such as Potomac Camp Road, Bloomington, Swanton. All of them could come to Kitzmiller. This would help alleviate the overcrowding related to the Oakland schools. It also keeps the school in a municipality whose revitalization depends on this building staying open. I believe that the current plan puts an unfair share of the burden on the southern end of the county. As it stands, all of the northern communities get to keep schools in their towns. That's outstanding, but all the southern end students are bused to 4 schools in Oakland, only located within a few miles of each other. All areas of Garrett County deserve to have education resources, especially when it involves a true community school, as Kitzmiller could lose its library, Head Start Center, and community center. I would also like to take the time to thank the Garrett County Commissioners for their financial appropriation of $500,000, and I would like to urge you to use that to keep a community school open.
Mr. Leo Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The probably as tired of hearing me as I am hearing you about this. You're probably sick of this by now. But I'm here tonight as a citizen, not as a mayor of Mountain Lake Park. And I certainly hate all that's happened today, and I think it's going to happen in Annapolis, that you don't close schools. I don't think there's any reason to close schools. My background is finance. I've looked at the budget. There's no question you have budgetary problems, but there's problems that should be fixed internally. Currently, you're spending 80% of the budget on salaries and benefits, which is enough to choke a hog. And certainly, you could do something with that. My original recommendation was to make a 2.5% across the board cut. And I felt at the time the commissioners would help out with this, which they have. And I think once the legislature comes to their senses and goes back in session, a lot of those things are going to be fixed. And if you have to, I think you need to go to court and get an injunction because of this April 30th deadline, if you need more time. You can't make a decision without knowing what the legislature's doing. And I think if you make a bad decision tonight, it's going to impact all of us for years to come. But thank you very much, and I hope you'll consider this, and please don't close the schools.
Thank you. Next on the list is Jack Carruthers.
Paraphrase with a quotation from Thomas Jefferson that appeared in the Republican about 2 weeks ago, the same issue that announced the superintendent's recommendation for closing the schools. The tax that you pay for education is not the 1,000th part of what you will pay for a tyrant who will arise and oppress the people left in ignorance. Not that you're leaving people in ignorance in this county. I happen to think you're doing a very good job, especially with the elementary students. Do a program, as George Washington with the Living History Group, for most of the students in the county, which we'll do next week. If some of you have time, come out in the mornings between 9 and 2 and observe and tell them you have orders from Colonel Washington. Kidsmiller School also has a branch of the Ruth Anna Library. I've been a member of the Board of Trustees of the Ruth Anna Library, but I don't want any of my remarks taken as an official position of the board because we really haven't discussed the issue yet. But if you close that school, we're going to have a problem. And I think I'll leave it there. If you take a school, particularly like the one at Kidsmiller, and close it, there goes the heart of the town. There's no question about that. It's just a small town anyway. And the trend nationally is toward smaller community schools rather than larger consolidated schools. And there's a good reason for that. You all know what it is. You get more than about 1,000 students in a school, and you're going to have problems with bullying, fighting, and worse. I don't know that much about the Bennett Road School, but it seems that they're as merited as Kidsmiller to stay open for all the programs that they have there. I'd like you to think about all these things. Think about it. See how you can work with the commissioners and bureaucrats and some of these legislators who really haven't done their job this year. And I think you can keep these schools open. And I want to see them open for a long time to come. Thank you.
Ashby.
Hello. Thank you for letting me speak. I didn't write anything down. Pretty well know what I want to say now. I've said it so many times. As you all know, I'm a big advocate for the special ed program at Dennett Road. People said don't make it personal, but if you don't make it personal, then you're just shutting down a building. These two little girls with the walker here, see, that's my personal reason for trying to save Dennett Road. So you have to forgive me if it's personal. The last couple months, I've met so many amazing people through this mess. I'm just here to tell you that I think we need to save all the schools. Friendsville is very important to them. Kitzmiller, you would ruin the whole town. And Dennett Road is like a town in itself, especially as far as the special ed kids go. I believe the other children that go there, they're a rare breed because they're raised up amongst these special need children. And I really think you'd be losing a big influence on all these children that go there. So please, I'll cut everything that you can cut to keep these schools open, because I believe to shut them down would be a major mistake that you're all going to look back with regret. Thank you.
Okay, the last person I have signed up is Steph Jenkins. Is Steph here? She still wish to speak? Okay. Are there any other comments? You need to sign in first.
So my children go to Bradford, not on your recommendation to close, but will definitely be impacted if you decide to close. Last year you closed Bloomington, and our classes went up. My oldest son is very fast at catching on, but other children in his class are falling behind. Crellin, I went there when I was younger. Great school, nationally ranked. Kitzmiller, my cousins went there. That is their community. There's no place but Kitzmiller School. Friendsville is the same way. Dennett Road, special needs. If you close these schools, you're taking our community away from us. That's all.
That was Amanda Herman. Sorry, Angel Sim.
Thanks so much for all of your time and consideration of the superintendent's proposal. I know that you have had to sit through many extra meetings, and I know that many of the meetings have been very long, and I appreciate all of your hard work. Thank you so much for listening to all the public comments, and I want to thank Mrs. Siebold and Mrs. Dowden for visiting Dennett Road this school year. I'm a little disappointed that the other members didn't come to visit Dennett Road, and I'm hopeful that that doesn't mean anything negative. I just want to say that before you make your decision tonight, I hope you've thought about how the decision will affect the entire community. Closing the schools is devastating because, of course, every school is the heart of every community, and I hope that in addition to the vote tonight, we might hear a specific number of teachers that the Board of Education plans to reduce in force or RIF, because as it's been mentioned, 80% of the savings is going to come from a loss of jobs of teachers and staff. And when you hear that number of teachers that may be laid off because of the schools that have been closed, then that would be the number of people that could be eligible for unemployment, that might lose their homes, then it might cause families to leave Garrett County. These things are all connected. They're not an isolated decision. I mean, it would be good to, just say, oh, it's a business decision, but I know just for myself, just personally for me, and I'm just one person in the room tonight, your decision is going to affect obviously where I work and where my son, who's 2, will go to school, but more importantly, it's going to affect where I live, how much money I have, and even sadly if I'm able to stay in the county. And if you look around the room, I'm just one of a lot of people that are here tonight because your decision is going to change their lives as well. So I'm hopeful that you'll vote to save the schools this evening, because I really don't want to go back to my school tomorrow and look my students in the face and say that after everything everyone in this room did, it all came down to the money, and that was all that mattered.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? And if you do plan on commenting, you need to come up and sign the list, please. Okay, Monica Rinker. Thank you.
I would like to thank you, like everyone else that has stood up here and allowing us to speak tonight. And I encourage everyone in the audience to please be vocal, because we all can make a difference. We're not here tonight to look back at the past on what should have been done, but what needs to be done. We have 3,085 reasons why we need to stay open, not only impacting students, schools who will be closed, but the schools where all the children will be going to. Their comfort zone will be turned upside down. We are all aware of our schools. They will be over the state capacity. Classrooms will be larger. Learning and test scores that are so important to people downstate will be hindered. Our children are being left behind. Who can save our fate? In an article in the Cumberland Times News dated February 9, 2012, costs to get portions of Westernport and Lower New Germany roads repaired up to standards cost $9 million. However, they wrote, if funding is not available, the roads could be milled down and turned into gravel. They will not be closed. So I must ask you, if the county roads department can do this, not close a road, come up with a solution, what can we do to keep our schools from closing? In the paper that was out today from the Board of Garrett County Commissioners, I'm sure a lot of you are aware of it, but there was 2 things that I felt are very important in it. I highlighted to say. Recommendations for savings from your elementary school advisory committee should help to avoid the closure of elementary schools. And it is important to note that it is the belief of the Board of County Commissioners that funding was allocated in fiscal 2012 to keep all schools open. One more important thing, in this paper dated 2010 to 2011, that was sent home with our children, I thought this was very important. As a school system, Garrett County was not in system improvement, and the only system in the state of Maryland with no schools identified as schools in need of improvement. So in closing, there is hope. I have not lost my faith and confidence in our Board of Education to fix this budget, to come together to save our schools. Thank you.
Carla Niner. Thank
I originally didn't know if I was going to speak or not, but sitting here tonight listening and thinking about it, there's something wrong when every year, for the last couple of years, we've went through this. And I just know there's got to be waste. I have the commissioners blaming the board, I have the board blaming the commissioners. I don't know where it's at. Maybe we need somebody new to come in and audit both books to find out why. But I do know this much. You close, you riff these teachers. These teachers have spent years learning and putting it into practice. I went to school with a lot of the teachers that are still teaching that are my age. I don't have kids in the Garrett County system now, but I got grandkids. They have the exact same teachers that my children have. And let me tell you something. I've seen a difference in the new teachers from the older teachers. Not taken away from the older teachers because they were trained the way they were trained. But there are so many advances in technology and the new stuff. When you lose these new kids, they're leaving. There goes your enrollment in years to come. And not only that, I want my grandkids to have the best education they can get so that they're competitive in the job market, that they're prepared for whatever this world brings. And right now, it is a global conflict. We're in the hardest economic times there is. But you better put your priorities in order, and you better put it in those teachers and those kids, because that's going to be your future when you're old, and you cannot be able to make the decisions. Thanks.
Sorry, I laughed.
Audra Sharpless.
I have some questions for the board, more so than a statement. I've already expressed my feelings to you all, and in the shirt I'm wearing, I'm sure you can guess what they are. My question is more so, your vote tonight, is that set in stone, or do we have hope if the legislature comes through? And if so, what will happen? When will that happen? I mean, part of us as a staff feel like if you vote to close us tonight, we need to go start packing tomorrow. I just want to know, do we still have hope after tonight?
A different motion can be made by the board later on if there's a change. I'm not saying there would, but there is the possibility to come back and revisit the closing if there is a closing or whatever the situation is. So yes, there is the opportunity for that.
Is there a time frame for that or not?
No, there's no time frame that I know of. We wish there was a time frame on the people that we're looking for the money from, but evidently there seems to be no time frame.
I agree, and I have myself wrote them several letters and emails. I have actually gotten some responses, and I encourage everyone sitting here tonight, you know, they're making tough decisions based on what's been dealt to them, unfortunately. We all need to get off our duffs and get in contact with the government and with the legislatures. They're letting us down. We elected them. So please, 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 call them, write them, let them know we're not happy, and we're not going to sit by and let them do this to us. Thank you.
Joy Chapman.
Well, I've been up here several times in the last 2 months, and I didn't have anything written down because they pretty much said it all. But there's a few ideas. I know they brought it up at the meeting we had for Dennett Road about charging for the Dennett Road gym for extracurricular people that use the gym. My husband has a fast pitch softball team that we travel downstate and play. We use that gym from January 1 to about May 1st on every Saturday. So I asked him tonight, I said, so what am I going to throw out to offer? We're willing to pay monthly to use that gym because we went out of town this past weekend with a great group of girls. We took 13 girls to Laurel, Maryland, 14 and under, the youngest being 10. We finished 3rd out of 14 in the 14 and under. They did awesome, but it wouldn't be happening if we didn't have the time and the effort and the involvement in the community to do it. I just think there's a little more few options that we could get. I'm not only fighting for my son, I'm fighting for the community. Because not only is my kid going to be affected, every kid that goes to Crawford, Yacht Glades, and those kids that go to Dennett Road that have special needs. I wholeheartedly believe that my 13-year-old is going to go to college, and that's what she's going to do. She's going to go into special needs education because she loves them. Sherry, I don't know your granddaughter's kids, your granddaughters, but my daughter does. She loves them wholeheartedly. Every time she sees them, she speaks to them. I just think there needs to be a little more time and effort put in. Did you allow money in the budget that you're printing to make the changes to Lock Glades for the special needs kids? I mean, I didn't see that on her representation last month. You're cutting $50,000 for maintenance, but how much you're going to have to put into that building to make for the special needs kids. You say the kids are first. I don't think right now that the kids are being put first. I think they're the first thing to be put under the bus.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Hebden. I have spoken to you many times before, and I'm not really going to say anything new other than I'd just like to remind you all that you're playing with people's lives, and we don't have any choice. We've done everything that we can. We've done everything right. We've fought for our schools, and we really want to keep them that way. But you are affecting everything. I don't know how personally involved you are with any of our teachers or our students, but the people in this county are wonderful. My son's teacher, when we first moved here, Mr. Knapp, he came out to my son's baseball game, which meant a lot to everybody, and he is one of the new hires, somebody that could lose their job. And he is, I think, just one of the most wonderful teachers that my sons could hope to have. I really hoped that my son William would get him next year. I'm really still hoping that you're just going to turn around and have the big celebration you said you were going to have last week, and that you're just letting us spin our wheels right now. But in case that's not happening, I'm just, again, I beg the commissioners, now I'm begging the board, please keep our schools open. I can't face going into that school tomorrow and having to tell my child and all the other children that they're no longer going to be with their friends and the teachers that they love. So, again, I don't know that it makes any difference, but I'm begging.
I'd like for people to see the information this evening as we once again review our situation as of this date. Today is April the 24th. As you all know, this is a very critical date to us because as Mr. Martin shared, April 30th is a date in which we have to make a decision. The board has to make a decision by the 30th if they're going to be able to consider closing schools for the next school year. The vote has to be taken prior to that date. We have been waiting for information from the legislature, and at the present time, the commissioners today did come through with an additional $500,000 this afternoon. And we're very appreciative of that. However, that from the state, we still, they're not going into session until potentially May the 14th is the date that we're anticipating that they are potentially going back into session. Our problem this evening is the fact that we don't know what's going to happen in the legislative session. And as a result, until we have the dollars in hand, that I have to recommend a balanced budget, and therefore that's the reason that once again this evening we're going to be talking about school closures. As we're looking, if you'll notice, if you can see clear in the back even, that here, if you'll notice, we've talked about in fiscal year 2011. 2011 is the year in which we had our first loss of funding. And I know people were saying about misuse of funds. It was that the state funding changed at that time. Prior to 2000, and in the year of 2010, is when it was determined that it would sunset the hold harmless provision. Hold harmless means that as a result, if you increase in enrollment, you would get a little more money. If you decreased, you would be funded at the same level as the previous year. 2011 was our first year in which we had less funding because of our declining enrollment. You'll notice that we had almost $1 million at that time. Then for this current year, we were down $1.5 million concerning that. And with that, we do know that the commissioners were able to provide us some additional funding last year. And as you said, some of that funding was determined that it would keep a school open, and part of it was used then, or some of the dollars, for giving across-the-board raises. What happened was that there had been 4 years of not receiving steps at that time. And so the people that were entitled to have a pay, because with steps they're to get an annual increase for the younger personnel. And what happened is that once you get to the top of that, then there are no increases. And that's where there was a stipend amount that was given to those individuals then of $400 and $700 for their increase. So that happens to explain a little bit of what they were talking about. It wasn't the administration that just got pay raises or other personnel left out and so forth. That was part of the negotiated agreement. And as you know, this year we're also in negotiations, and it's been an extremely hard year to negotiate. We had the request of earlier that was shared with you that we asked for a decrease across the board. And we had requested from the negotiating team or from the union earlier to poll all of their employees as to taking a pay cut, and that they were not agreeable to that. We asked for different percentages. We went as low as the 2%, and we went as high as 10%. And looking at how we would be able to balance our budget this year. So those are some of the discussions that we have gone. We also talked about, since 2004, we have lost approximately 73 positions. And during that time, people didn't realize that we had lost positions because we used attrition. And attrition is what I was going to use this year as well. That's the reason I was an advocate of doing the retirement incentive. We were very pleased that the retirement incentive did generate some savings for us. And we're looking at, out of that, we had 17 people, I believe that 19 people that retired, and that we believe that we can at least absorb 14 to 15 of those positions. And so that's what we're trying to do with every time there's any change in employment. When we were talking about that. The time, as we were saying, is difficult. The future is not going to look much better for us. That's one of the reasons that we have tough decisions, that the board has a very tough decision. As you've said, that I am the interim. Yes, that's correct. And when I stayed to help the system through this situation this year, I was anticipating we would have a difficult year. I didn't expect it to be this difficult. I really thought that the legislature, as we had said before about celebrating, that we were going to be able to celebrate, and that together we had been able to resolve the matters. However, to this date, we're still not at that situation. Well, I wanted to show you also is that for FY13, our state aid will be just slightly, as you can see there, about $220,000 difference from FY05, as you'll notice. And during that time, everything has increased in cost, just like in your home. You know that those are things that occur. Since 2000, as we have shared with you before, no district has faced as large of a one-year percentage decrease in their state aid. We were at 10.27% reduction, and that Garrett and Allegheny's loss of 6.5 in FY12 represented the third largest annual decrease. So you can see that we have had the major decreases in our state funding. We've been very fortunate that our commissioners have funded us above the maintenance of effort. Many counties have not had that luxury. But when we're looking here, our state aid has decreased nearly $4.8 million since 2010. And during that same period, our county has increased our appropriation by $1.7 million. Plus, they gave us the additional $500,000 this afternoon. Our current funding shortfall. You will notice here that we still have our state aid, and you'll remember from the last time I talked about how much we would have to have for making up for our carryover from last year. We also are projecting the Title I reduction. We're looking at our non-public placement increases, and remember I've shared with you that this is not always within our control, that other agencies place students and we're responsible for that. And this year it's going to exceed what we had budgeted by around $200,000. Our retirement incentive was a positive. We're looking at being able to save around $800,000 by not replacing the people, and also because of people that would possibly even be moving into those positions of making less. We looked at our reductions. We talked about because we had 142 less students that we would not be giving quite as much to the schools. We heard you talking about making reductions, so we looked across the board at reducing supplies, although that's a concern, and we're looking at how we can help some of our smaller schools with their consumable supplies. Transportation, and originally we had talked about that being closer to $100,000. But what happened is the cost, just like with you, the cost of diesel has gone up. And so we're anticipating next year to be at $4.65 is what we're planning on. So hopefully if we can have a savings there, that's another variable that you can't imagine what the situation's going to be. And maintenance. And yes, with maintenance, there's around $50,000 that we talked about reducing. We're also talking that one of the questions this evening was talking about what it would cost to make the renovations to Yacht Glades. And that's going to be approximately $20,000, and it will probably be less, according to Mr. Thomas, if our people in-house do the work. So we're looking into how we could accomplish that. So we've already taken that also into our initial thoughts of our funding. Staff development, and we talked about how this is such a critical time for staff development. When I shared with our administrators about this reduction, they were quite concerned because of our teachers having a terrible responsibility, and you're right, they do. Currently, what's happening is that we're having to have our students prepared to take the MSA assessment at the same time as we are moving into what they call the Common Core, which is the new assessment that's going to be coming. And during that time is the PARC assessments. So it's just a constant matter of change. As we said, the only constant we have is change. And so that's going to be very challenging for us, how we're going to be able to support all of our staff. Every year, the areas that we have reduced have been staff development. And you're talking about investing in our future is why that's so important to us. Again, talking about the school closures, to be able to generate those kind of dollars, we're looking at driver's education. Then, of course, because of the number of personnel, and you were asking, potentially we're looking at around 40 positions that will have to be eliminated this year. And high school media hours. We also talked about JROTC. We're trying to see if there's a way that we can combine for a county program. The other things you can immediately notice, the other thing that's very concerning to us happens to be academic intervention, because as we have less personnel, whether we close schools or we don't close schools. If we don't close schools, there will even be less personnel, that we'll have to reduce more staff if the schools are not closed. So that's the situation. We'll have to reduce more instructional staff if the schools are not closed. If the schools are closed, it's sort of spread over the different areas that we have support personnel as well at that time. So today, based on our financial situation, that to be able to preserve this excellent school system, which I believe Garrett County is an excellent system, and I'm glad that so many are proud of that. But because we are at this juncture, at this time period, that of having to have a balanced budget, that this evening I must still recommend the closing of Dennett Road Elementary and Kitzmiller Elementary at the end of this school year. And the $500,000 we received this afternoon from the County Commission, what I would recommend that we would do with that is to reduce the number of instructional employees that we would have to reduce. This evening, unfortunately, the superintendent's final recommendation is for the closure of Dennett Road Elementary. After obtaining input from the advisory group, public comment, and a long-term review of many factors, I recommend the closing of Dennett Road Elementary, effective with the start of the 2012-13 school year in the August of 2012. If the closing of Dennett Road is approved, the students who would have attended Dennett Road will attend Broadford Elementary, Yock-Lades Elementary, or Crellin Elementary, beginning with the start of the 2012-13 school year. The rationale for this recommendation is due to the continuous decline in our countywide enrollment, coupled with the dramatic loss of state funding, commencing with the loss of hold harmless provision in 2011. Which has had a significant impact upon our state funding this year. We have lost approximately 20% of our enrollment since 2000, along with our significant jump in wealth on the state funding ranking has significantly further impacted our loss of state aid. With a projected loss of additional enrollment through 2019 and our wealth per pupil, our state funding will continue to decline in the years ahead. The financial conditions factor is the critical and determining factor for the reason that I'm asking for the closure. Decisions must be made that have the least negative or adverse impact upon the majority of our students and staff. We've looked at the areas, just like the advisory group, of the student enrollment trends. We know that Dennett Road has lost some students in the past 10 years, and there are no projections at this time that the enrollment will significantly reverse. The building is in good condition, but it had been slated for renovation and is currently not part of our 5-year facility master plan because other needs came before it. Also, we have a concern about the need of a new roof. Transportation. Bus routes are already established and there is sufficient capacity. Utilizing our current buses to provide transportation from Dennett Road to Broadford, Crellin, and Yock-Lades. Educational programs are not a factor because we feel that all of our schools in Garrett County follow the same guidelines related to curriculum that includes county-approved materials, subject area, time allotments, and curricular content. All students, we believe, receive quality instruction regardless of their school location. Racial composition is not a factor. Student relocations. By distributing the students to Broadford, Crellin, and Yoklades, we believe there is space to meet the needs of our students. Yoklades has been designated, as has been shared earlier, as a special education center for the southern end. The class sizes may be larger, but they are well within the state average. Impact on the community. Of course, the building needs to be turned over to the commission, back to county government. Concerns have been expressed about the loss of the gym, the 2 playgrounds, the baseball diamond, walking trail for community activities, and loss of space for the Head Start program. Other community activities or events that may occur at the school will be impacted pending on the future determination of the building by the county. Although this is an area of concern, these ancillary uses of the school property cannot be a determining factor in my recommendation. Other factors, the close proximity of Dennett Road to Broadford and Yoklades Elementary was another factor that contributed to the consideration of Dennett Road for closure. Financial conditions. We have documented the drastic change in our state funding commencing with FY 2011, with the loss of hold harmless funding, which will continue into the future. The loss could be much higher as our wealth ratio increases compared to the state. Our state funding has decreased due to the loss of over 20% of our enrollment since 2000, and we are projected to lose additional enrollment through 2019. Our state funding has been further reduced by our increase in wealth ranking on the state aid formula from 17th place in 2000 to 5th in 2013. In FY13, Garrett County was the only district to increase in wealth in Maryland and the largest loss of enrollment in the state. This is for the 3rd consecutive year in which Garrett County has had the largest percentage loss of enrollment in Maryland. The county has also lost state funding, which has impacted its ability to fund our schools without raising taxes. We have a current deficit that requires the closing of Dennett Road Elementary with an estimated savings of $1,214,150. If the school is not closed, programs and personnel reductions, as documented in our other scenarios, will be necessary and can be devastating to our system. Thank you.
You have the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion to accept the recommendation?
I think that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent.
Mr. Carr, do I have a second? Okay, I have a second from Mrs. Downton. Shall we have discussion? Yes. Who would like to start?
Good evening, and I do know how emotional this is for the parents that are out there. For those of you who may not know me, I worked in this county for 26 years and started at the southern end of the county. I was at Loch Lynn. I did some summer work at Kitzmiller, so I am familiar with their schools. Thank you very much to Dennett Road for inviting me over, and I was there last week just to revisit their school. It's been a long time since I've been there. For the last 16 years, I was the PPW, which chaired special ed meetings, so I'm well aware of special ed populations also. I just want to say that in the past year that I've been on the board, I have been downstate. We were assured by the Senate committee that they heard our voices, that they were going to do something to stand up, and we would get some aid. I was there when they said that. I was at the commissioners' meeting last week, where I was assured we had to go with a doomsday budget as it was. Now, the question was asked just recently, tonight, if more money was to come through, could any of our decisions tonight be changed? And I believe they could be. But we cannot go back and revisit again. For 2 years now, I have sat on 5 school closing advisory committees. I've listened to 5 schools, 2 last year, 3 this year. And I know how heart-wrenching it is for communities. I feel that I represent the whole county. We need to look at middle school programs, we need to look at high school programs, we need to ensure that your children have what they need academically. Someone spoke of technology. We need to update our technology. We need to update our textbooks. Something has got to change in our formula over the next few years. I believe we're going to recover, and I believe if we get an influx of students, hopefully we can deal with that then. But for right now, we have to look at the future of all of our students. That's why I'm voting in favor of closing Bennett Road tonight. Thank you.
I'm going to take the time to stand up because I'm more comfortable that way. Told the board that I wanted to address the people of Garrett County. Last time we had this discussion last year, and I had to do the dreadful thing of closing Bloomington School. I never took the chance. It was time to explain why I voted the way I did. After listening to people many times over this past months, sitting up here wishing I could say something about law, not being able to say something just listening, I decided tonight, if I have to take a half hour or whatever, I'm going to say some things to answer some of your questions. It's like the man said in the movie Cool Hand Luke, an old movie out of the past. What we have here is a failure to communicate. I hear you. I know what you're saying, but I don't think you understand what a board member has to do. So I'll take a few times to tell you that. First of all, I want to thank you all so very much for coming and saying, and I have heard you, and I don't mind sitting on the board. That's why I ran for office. I don't mind if we have to do this every year for the next 10 years. I won't mind that. That's why I ran for office, because I'm a servant representative of you, the people. I'm not an administrator. I'm not an educator. I am a representative of the public, and that's what you are. So I want to thank you. First of all, the next thing I want to say is, unfortunately, some would say it's a welcome. I'm leaving the board. My last meeting will probably be September. I have bought property in Pennsylvania, and I'm about to retire. It's the 4th best state in the country to retire, so I'm moving. And I will not be able to be a board member. So I could vote tonight with the rest of my colleagues and leave and not have a care in the world about it because I'm gone. But I've been a board member for 22 years. I've been a student in Garrett County for 12 years. My children are in here, so I've got 34 years in this system. So it means a lot to me. And Garrett County means a lot to me. And if Garrett County wasn't in Maryland, I wouldn't be leaving. But Maryland is one of the worst states in the country. It's the 5th highest tax state, and it's going to get worse. We got a real problem downstate with representation. And now that they've got it jerry-rigged so they can get rid of our congressman, you're not going to have no representation in Western Maryland at all. Not only in the state level or the federal level. So maybe I would suggest maybe if you are like me, look north or look south. Anyhow, what we can cut and what we can't cut, it came up tonight. Why don't we go with a 2% across the board cut or a 3% across the board cut? I don't know if you picked it up or not. We unfortunately have a union in Maryland. We can't do that as board members. That superintendent can't even give furlough days as a superintendent. Now we've been interviewing some people for the new job of superintendent. One of them was from Virginia. They don't have to worry about it in Virginia. They don't have to worry about that in Virginia. But in Maryland, we have to worry about that. And another thing, we just can't unilaterally cut those things. We have to. We can't do it. Hello? As board members, we can't do it. We can't suggest 3% across the board cut or anything. We can't do furlough days. There's 7 days we could deal with that the the teachers are working, that the students aren't here. We could furlough those days and make it up later years. But we can't do that. We don't have the authority to do that. Superintendent don't have the authority to do that. So again, being in the state of Maryland, there's a situation. And also, if we did try to do that, there's a thing called a labor board in Maryland now, where 3 people appointed by the governor can override what your elected people want to do when it comes to labor. And like the gentleman said, 80% of our budget is salary and wages. So that's off the table. We can't touch it. So now we got to find the savings in the 20% part of our budget. Okay. Other things we can't do. Federal spending. The federal government has restrictions on the money that they give us. We could use the money in some areas we want to use it in, but no, it's got strings attached. Anything comes from the federal government, there are strings attached, and you can't use it nowhere else. The state government, also, a lot of the stuff comes from them, has strings attached. One of them is special ed money. It has been mentioned, but not very strongly. Do you realize if somebody from Baltimore who has a child, special needs child, and they're in a hospital or something in a special school because that's what their IEP says, they move to Garrett County, the child doesn't come, but the parents come. We, the taxpayers of Garrett County, have to foot that bill. And sometimes it's been as high as $250,000, $300,000. That your children's money is gone because the state says it's fair because they moved there. And that's, again, living in the state you're living in, these are some difficult things. And I don't know how you're going to correct it, but that's some of the things. So and also, I don't believe that there's a shortage of money. I believe there's an abundance of spending. In the federal level, no problem. We'll go overseas and build schools in Iraq. We'll build schools in Afghanistan. And then they'll blow them up again, kill our children, and we'll turn around like a bunch of idiots and go back over there and build them up again. Time and time again, we'll do that in the federal government. Never been a nation in history that has taken its children and its most precious resources, had them killed on foreign fields, and never take nothing in return, only get a black eye and a cursing from the people we help. That's our country. I don't know why we do it, but that's what our leaders do. But we can spend money overseas. In the state budget, we can spend money on things like cleaning the Chesapeake Bay and those kind of things, when anybody knows that Virginia dumps into it, Pennsylvania dumps into it, West Virginia dumps into it. They're not putting no money into it. But we're going to save the Bay, but we can't have money for education. We've got to save the Bay. Things like that disturb me and frustrate me as a board member. But that's the state in which we live. And also the county. Not these commissioners. You've heard me say a lot of times I really appreciate this group of commissioners we have. And I've heard some of you frustrated with them. They picked up the ball. With some commissioners from the past I have trouble with. And they know, because I've talked to them about when they ran. I don't understand why we, as a county, are the only county in the state that has a 14, through 14 program. We're spending money sending kids to college, but we can't keep elementary schools open. That is something that I can't comprehend. Not as a taxpayer, not as a board member, but also as a taxpayer. I will pay taxes to send your kids K through 12. But I'm darn sad when you ask me to pay for your kids' college with no explanation of no financial need. I know a guy who sends his kids to Garrett Community College because it's free, who has 2 properties, one on the lake and one in town. And is that fair? No. But it felt good for these commissioners in the past to do this because they got a pat on the back from the governor and everybody thought it was wonderful. But that's what I'm saying. The priorities and how you spend money. And I learned a thing about that in elementary school, like I said. In my life of people, I'm 52 years old. And I've made a decent living. A lot of my classmates and stuff make more than I do. but financially I'm in better shape than they are. Why is that? Because I know how to spend. I know how to save a dollar. I know how to put away and invest in those kind of things. That's what you got to do. So I look at this budget and say, how can we do this? Where are we going to spend our money at? Smart decisions have to be made, not only in the county level, but also on the state level and the federal level. And unfortunately, the man said we had 8 billion people in the world. We're running deficits in this country of trillions of dollars. It's going wrong. And all that rolls downhill to the children of Kitzmiller and to the children of Denham Road. And another thing we're going to look at is the future. This school needs renovated. Broadford needs renovated. The whole southern end of the county, and this is why I voted to close Bloomington. The whole southern end of the county will not have an elementary school. I talked to them then and said, why can't we build a new elementary school on Backwood Mountain? So Bloomington, Kitzmiller, Swanton, Altamont, and perhaps Deer Park and anything east of 560 could go there. Then we could see about using the other schools and those kind of things. But that's what my suggestion was, and they said that is a possibility last year, but we didn't know any further with it. You gotta look at the future. If these schools need renovated, where are we going to put the kids while the school's being renovated? Now, if we build a new elementary school in the southern end, perhaps then we could close Denham Road, and the kids would be moved out, and we could put the kids in there till this school was renovated, and then we could put the kids in in Broadford in there till it's renovated, and then you could do something. And you could put the southern end school could be the special ed school. These are things you can think of. But that's down the road, and I won't be here to see that. Finally, I want to say this to the board. I will not be able to vote to close school tonight. I will not do that. If you, after what these communities have done for you, and the commissioners have done for you, if you feel that next year you can come back here and you need help from the community, from the commissioners again, after 2 years in a row, I don't think it'll happen. So I'll tell you, think long and hard. And I'll say this to you as well. I told you this in a meeting. The night we leave here, decisions made, decisions made. And I'm nothing personal against any of you. It's not a personal thing. But I think at times when people run for office, it's time people do what they say they're going to do and stand up for what they're going to do. And our thing says our goals of our Garrett County Board of Education, which we set many years ago, 1994 I believe it was, we value small community schools. That's it. So again, thank you for your time. I hope I've answered your questions about why we can't do the things that make sense. So many things make sense, but I tell you, I feel frustrated. I feel frustrated as a board member we can't do the things that make sense because there's some law downstate or some union somewhere or somebody else that don't even live here telling us we can't do these things. And if you ever want to run for Board of Education, that's the frustration you'll face. Those are things that are frustrating. But I tell you, I've heard you. Because quite frankly, I will say this and I'll close. Quite frankly, Denham Road, I thought when I saw that Denham Road was going to be closed, I thought that's a no-brainer. Because you got, so close to Broadford and you're so close to Yockleys, no one will be concerned. But I heard your voice. And I heard how you care about your special needs students, those kind of things. And I'll tell you what too. Unfortunately, the most trying thing for me tonight is this. Not that we have to close schools, that's very crucial, but also, regardless if we close schools or not, we're going to have to lay off anywhere close to around 30 people or so. And And again, the union tells us, the law tells us who we must lay off. We have to lay off the youngest and the brightest, the new ones, the students, the ones, now Virginia, they don't have that problem. They can lay off on the basis of, their evaluations and things like that. Not in Maryland. We're going to lay off seniority. And these parents, these little ones are going to be going away. But if we decide to go that route, and the state does come through with money, we can hire those teachers back. You see that? But I'm afraid that if we close the schools, that they will, even if they come through with twice the money, they won't open them back up. So that's why I can't do that.
Good evening. This is a decidedly tough act to follow with an unpopular point of view. Unlike Rodney, who's retired to Pennsylvania, I retired to Garrett County some 16 years ago. My grandparents weren't born here, but my grandchildren were. My grandchildren are in the schools with your children. So these schools are very important to my heart, not just to my head. And I love the idea of the small schools. But our schools, on the national average, are small. And we are presented with a budget we have to face. And the only places to cut are buildings and or teachers. And right now we're faced with both. And my position is, I'm going to go with the jobs. Not that I want to close a school, but I hope that your better angels will understand that as heart-wrenching as it is to send your children to another school, it's much tougher to lose your job. And we thank the commissioners because we're going to be able to save them. But we still have more jobs that are out there. So we're hoping that the legislature comes through in May. We think that'll happen. You never know. People have been concerned about special ed. That was our very first question as a board. Are we going to be able to do right by our special ed kids? Since September, this has been a constant guest. We all wake up during the night agonizing over it. We have been downstate. We have read and read and read. We certainly read all of your letters, your emails. And we are in it together. We are not the enemy, but we are faced with the fact that we're going to have increased class sizes. If we don't close the two schools, the class sizes will even be bigger and we'll have to lay off more teachers. And for the sake of your kids, I cannot face that. Thank you.
I just believe that we have to address the 20% loss in student population, and that's just going to be exacerbated over the next 7 years. I think we need to start addressing the empty class space that we have. Primarily for those two reasons, I'm going to vote in favor of closing Dennett Road.
Thank you. This has been a long process, and I appreciate all of you being with us. We've been to Annapolis, we've been to hearings in your communities, and we felt very welcome there, and thank you so much for that. As they said, this is the second year, and it's painful. We do have lost enrollment, and we have now lost money. So we have to figure this out. We were hoping we'd be able to get the monies, make it one more year, and hopefully something would happen next year. We appreciate the commissioners, $500,000, thank you very much. Also, they're offering us that without raising taxes, and I know a lot of people are very appreciative of that. So we appreciate them being able to make those arrangements for both. As we've looked at the scenarios over the last year, we've asked for different situations. And my thought way back was, what if we leave the schools open because of the fact that the salaries are 80% of our budget? Leave the schools open. This seems to be very important to people. Plus, it is, you know, we're talking about in some cases being over state capacity if we put the schools together. So as we looked at the scenarios, we were seeing how many people we would have to let go if we close one school, if we close two schools, if we close no schools. So you can make it with closing no schools, but you've got $1 million that you've got to figure out where you're going to find it, $1 million plus. So that would mean, it meant about 40 teachers at the beginning. Now with the monies, the $500,000, we could possibly get that down to about 28 teachers, teaching positions. So you have to make it, the decision is, how are you going to come up with the money? Are you going to come up with it by closing schools, thus getting rid of teaching positions and other positions? Or are you going to leave the schools open and come up with it just from teachers' salaries? And it's not the other people in the buildings because they're still needed in those buildings. So it does cut into the teachers and the assistants and all. So, very difficult situation. I don't know if I'll have to vote. I vote if it's a tie. I would favor, since we've got the $500,000, we've cut down on the amount of people we have to let go. I would prefer to keep the schools open. I don't know how long that would be. And hopefully we've got to address the fact that we're short $1 million plus, so we have to have a plan. And that would be a plan. If we get the money from the state, we could possibly bring some of the people back that we had to let go. Because things that we need here to make the economy grow are young families, and more people want to move to our communities. And if we close the schools, I feel unfortunately we are not doing the things that need to be done to grow the economy. So are there any other comments? Okay, have a call for the vote. All in favor of closing Dennett Road Elementary School, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The motion carried.
This is the superintendent's final recommendation for closure of Kitzmiller Elementary School. As we talked about, input from the advisory groups, the public comment, and a long-term review of many factors, that I recommend the closing of Kitzmiller Elementary School effective with the start of the 2012-13 school year in August 2012. I will briefly summarize the impact upon the 9 factors in the Garrett County Board of Education Policy 940. Student enrollment trends. Kitzmiller School has suffered a loss of students from 94 in 2000 to 49 students this year. There are no projections that this enrollment loss will reverse, although their enrollment has been fairly stable since 2005. Kitzmiller age or condition of building. Kitzmiller is the oldest school building used in the county. Although it is still maintained well, it is just a matter of time before costly infrastructure repairs will be needed. State funding would be very unlikely to support these projects. Transportation. Bus routes are already established and there is sufficient capacity on the buses serving our southern schools to accommodate the additional students coming from Kitzmiller. Bus time is no longer than other routes in various areas of the county. The travel time estimate ranges from 25 to 60 minutes. Of our 66 bus routes in the county, 18 are currently 1 hour or more travel time to serve our elementary schools. This is partly because Garrett County is a rural county. Educational programs, as we said before with Dennett Road, this is not a factor because we believe that we provide excellent instruction in all schools. Broadford Elementary has the same programs and increased opportunities for services and enrichment due to the higher number of teachers, support staff, and classes for each grade level. Full-time special education services will also be available there. Racial composition, again, is not a factor. Student relocation. There is adequate space for the students at Kitzmiller to be included at Broadford Elementary. Naturally, the class sizes will be larger than they are presently in Kitzmiller. Impact on the community. The Board of Education intends to transfer the Kitzmiller Elementary building and property to the county government. Although there is a legitimate concern for the possible impact of the closure on Kitzmiller Elementary School on the county library, Head Start programs, after-school programs, and the playground and ball fields. Again, these ancillary uses of the school property cannot be a determining factor in my recommendation. Financial conditions. As we have repeatedly stated, we have documented the drastic change in our state funding. And also, the reason that the county has also lost funding, as we have shared, impacts its ability to fund our schools without raising taxes. And with our current deficit at this time, the closing of Kitzmiller will provide us an anticipated savings of $279,000. If the school is not closed, program and personnel reductions will be necessary and can be devastating to our system as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We have the recommendation of the superintendent to close Kitzmiller Elementary School. Do I have a motion? The motion made by Dr. Forster. Do I have a second? I have a second from Mr. Carr. Is there further discussion?
Okay, I'm not going to say much more than I said the last time. I'll just say dip with what I said the last time. But I will make a special say from my heart to the people of Kitzmiller. I've been your postmaster now for probably, 5 or 6 years. And maybe your postmaster 2 more, depending on if they're going to retire me or not. I will say this. I don't know if you realize or not, but some of the greatest institutions this country has, Harvard, Princeton, and some of these colleges, they were not public educations. They were started by churches. If I were to stay in the community, if I were to stay in Garrett County, I, as a citizen, would suggest this to you. There's things being taught in elementary schools in the state of Maryland that I'm not in favor of as a board member. There's things coming down now on race to the top. We got President Obama, and of course he wants to put his mark on education, so he's got this race to the top thing, a thing called Common Core, where all these things will be, no matter where you're at, you have this Common Core. If you're in a small community, and if you believe like I believe, you know what I believe, I would challenge, if they do vote to close the school, I would challenge the churches down there. You got 3 or 4 big churches. I would suggest looking into possibility, not a charter school, because you got the state and the Board of Education, everybody else regulating you there as well, but a community church school where you could educate your youth down there in Kitzmiller on your own, without any interference from the state, with a community like they did in days of old. The community steps up to the bat and they educate their own youth. That's something to consider. If you feel that the state, county, let you down, that's something as a parent I've considered. That's something you guys can consider as well, if they vote to take your school away. And you know what? That would send a message as well. Because those little 48 kids that don't seem to be so important, there'd be thousands of dollars that they would not get if the churches and the community decide to educate them on their own. And you could always educate them on their own through K through 6 and then send them on a middle school then. Might have to take a test or something like that. That's something to consider. Thank you.
I share Rodney's concern with what's being passed down to be taught, but I think it's something that has to be addressed at home. I admire the spirit of a community that could put together a church school with a caveat that if you're taking your children out of the schools now, we're going to wind up having to cut more programs in the high school. So that when you want to put them back into the high school, we'll be severely handicapped in terms of providing a real good curriculum for college and career orientation.
I'd like to address the parents too and the outstanding job you've done with your children on this issue. I work a lot with dropout prevention. And I say all the time that our students don't have passion about subjects. They don't have things, current events and things that they can get involved with and feel like they're making a difference. Your children have seen you take local government into your hands, and they're going to remember this. They're going to remember that their parents made a stand. When I was growing up, there was a quarry moving in next to our house. I remember my mother was on the local news lying down in front of an earth mover. The quarry still moved in. When they blasted, all of our dishes came down off our walls. But I remember, and eventually we moved. But I remember my mother making that stand. And she taught me that if you have a goal and something that's worth pursuing, then you can actually do something about it. I think you need to continue on this route, and I think the example you set for your kids is a great one.
And there's nothing personal about this. It's just from my professional perspective, I believe we have to address the issues I mentioned earlier. And I think even small schools, but we may have a disagreement over what size those small schools are. And I've been through school closings as an administrator. I know what it does to communities, and I'm not voting light, but I do believe that this is in my heart.
Thank you. As I expressed my feelings before, I believe that we could keep the schools open, and I know that, we can't do both because we do not have the money. But if we would have to get rid of teachers, we would have to have, which would cause the classrooms to be larger, but at least we'd have the structures there in case we do get more money in the future. Okay, any other comments? If not, do I have a motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent's? We've already got the motion. Discussion, excuse me. Okay, to the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, the motion carried. We would like to thank all of you for being here this evening. If there's no further business, we will adjourn.